Good morning to all of you. Allow me to stand on existing protocols in the interest of time and offer you also an apology for coming a little bit late. The truth is, that I was hastily finishing my intervention, which I thought I had done late last night. But then over the night, I thought of other ideas, and this is the beauty and also the difficulty of this subject about poverty, uh, because you always find new ideas and new challenges and new questions the more you think about it. And I'm sure that if I had more time, more ideas would have come up. And already now, listening to Dr. Abipo, I was also having other ideas coming to my mind in reaction to his very insightful intervention. First, the remark on the general title of this conference, Ending Poverty, is a provocative title because no country has ever done that in the world. The best countries have managed to reduce poverty, but ending poverty, like any gender-based violence, should remain our end target or the ideal we must pursue. And so I commend the organizer to have chosen this provocative title. And now let me share with you some personal reflections on poverty first. And I think firstly is that it is important to face the poor, to document and acknowledge its magnitude and its drivers, because this is the first step towards solutions. It's very difficult, it's impossible rather, to solve the problem that you are not properly identified, or even worse, that you refuse to identify properly because you think it will damage your reputation. So again, congratulations to next year for organizing this event on ending poverty. Another remark is that reducing poverty is not only a moral or religious duty, it's also a political, social, and economic imperative benefiting all citizens. It's political because reducing poverty helps to fight instability and insecurity. It helps strengthen participation in democratic processes, as well as it boosts factors like the general health level of the population with favorable consequences for all citizens. And it's also an economic imperative because driving people out of poverty, or rather giving them an impulse or a hand to help them get out of poverty, will raise productivity and consumption levels, boosting the economy. And again, with positive consequences for all. Now, I think that one of the biases of studies or conferences or policies about poverty is that they rarely integrate the opinion of poor people themselves. There are many explanations for this. First, poor people do not like to be categorized as such. They live in remote area. They don't have privileged access to media. They don't have time to engage in this kind of activities or debates of reflections. In many cases, they have education levels inferior to the average, and they are not used to speak up or they don't feel comfortable to do so. But this doesn't mean that they are not legitimate to speak up and not interesting to listen, rather the contrary. And I think that listening to their life experience, the challenges they face, the possible pathways they see themselves to escape from poverty, are excellent ways to identify some of the good solutions to the poverty issue. So I think that first we have to give the floor to poor people themselves and listen to their voice, and also the voice of those, for instance, of the civil society who know them well, and do this beyond simple statistics, which are of course very useful, but are not sufficient. And I think it's also useful because poverty cases and solutions to poverty might not be exactly the same in a country like Nigeria as in the US or in Europe. So it's also important to adjust to each specific case in each country or even each region. After 1 year in Nigeria, I must say I'm very much impressed by one thing in particular. It is the formidable entrepreneurial spirit of Nigerians. And I think this is not different among poor people. And in many cases, I've seen this among poor people actually. And I think that this is a powerful leverage to bring many Nigerians out of poverty. You just have to empower them to do so by themselves with a bit of capital, a bit of equipment, a bit of skills. And I've seen on the ground quite a lot of successful projects based on this. An acre of land, the basic seeds and tools, a fish pond. So this, remember a few months ago in Adamawa State, for instance, with IDPs there. Of course, you must have also a solid methodology to select beneficiaries, guide them, and make sure that their way of out of poverty is a one-way journey. And another observation that many have made before me, that women in particular are very much successful in the pathway. And again, this project I was mentioning in Adamawa, they were women. They were women from ITPs, and after a couple of years of their acre of land and their fish pond, they were employing men from host community. It was just remarkable. So empowering women is not just a question of gender equality, it is a powerful tool to reduce poverty. And actually, gender is a cross-cutting priority of all EU cooperation projects. 85% must have gender dimension as the main objective or an important dimension of the project. I think these observations also have to be put in the context of Nigeria, where the overwhelming majority of poor are working poor, meaning that there is an urgent need to create more jobs, far more jobs, and better jobs, more productive. But these jobs can also be created by poor people themselves when you give them opportunities to do so. And these opportunities might in particular benefit the rural population, among which poverty rate is at 72% versus 42% in cities in Nigeria. Then, of course, you also need social safety nets, and you need redistribution. And you must focus on children and youth to avoid poverty being hereditary. And youth is another horizontal target for us in Nigeria. And uplifting public services is also key, because it's not the same being poor, but with an access to good quality schools and hospitals for free, than having to pay for everything, all these services, even if you earn a little bit more money. And around the world, you can even see examples of quite cynical governments drawing up the budgets for public services and redistributing the money to the population and pretending to leave people out of poverty with this. And of course, it's not the case. In Nigeria, the EU has been supporting strongly these public services, education, health in particular, to basic public services crucial, in particular for the poorest. And for all this, you need to mobilize domestic resources. It's very difficult to be rapidly transformative when you are a state without resources or with very limited resources. So one of the challenges, the major challenge here in Nigeria and many other countries in Africa and in the emerging world also, is to raise public state revenues to, of course, then need to be skillfully used to finance these policies. Now, what is the EU doing in Nigeria? And actually, the subject which was proposed to me is not specifically about poverty, but rather on SDGs in general. And let me give you some element of response. The first and perhaps the most important is that it's not the European Union or international partners in general who will manage to reduce poverty in Nigeria or in any other country actually. Only good domestic, economic, and social policies can achieve this on the long term. But I agree that long term starts today. And that we should be transformative from day one, not incremental. But effects have to be shown rapidly, starting to show rapidly, but they will really be massive over the medium to long term. International assistance can only guide the design or implementation of these policies, enhance their positive impact, or mitigate somewhat negative ones. But as international partners, we always have to remain humble on the impact of our actions and not create false expectations either with beneficiaries, especially in a country like Nigeria, which is so huge. And sometimes we are the feeling that what we are doing is a drop in the ocean. But we shouldn't have the idea that what we are doing is determining the future of the country. No, it's up to people here and decision makers to do that. The second element I wanted to share with you is that SDGs that have been always at the core of EU cooperation projects, in particular me and Nigeria. And there is a specific importance of the two Latin words to continue to move the nexus between humanitarian aid and cooperation. Because humanitarian aid is still very much needed in Nigeria. And we are bringing through ECHO, or humanitarian office, 50 million euros of humanitarian aid every year, with our member states small level, the double of this figure. And the first way to fight poverty is to save poor people from starving. And as you know, currently in Nigeria, we have 33 million people food insecure. But then, of course, you also have to give them some basic livelihood resources. And then we have also projects on food security to complement humanitarian aid. And then another store on strengthening agricultural value chains. And you have to intervene on all this chain, all this continuum, if you want to be to have an impact. We also have been launching recently a set of projects at federal level, but working in particular in specific states. Projects we've been elaborating in the last 2 years, and we've been launching in particular the last 3 months. So 87 million euros of 2-year funding, so mainly EU, but also with some of the member states funding. And these 87 million euros are focusing in particular to support the strengthening of social safety nets and the resilience of population, so that they don't fall back into poverty when confronted to a shock, be it economic or insecurity or public health emergency, for instance. You've perhaps heard about the SUSI project that we launched tomorrow in Abia State, after we launched it in Sokoto, Oyo, and Benue. And we are also including IDPs in these projects. We have projects for renewable solutions, CPIN and SPATS in Sokoto, through urban integration. And this is about supporting the integration of IDPs and their host communities into the urban fabric and economy of state capitals or other large cities. In the Lake Chad area, we also have the RESILAC 2 projects aiming at returning some level of social cohesion to Lake Chad Basin, impacted by displacement and poverty. And this project, RESILAC 2, aims, for instance, at increasing the resilience of vulnerable population through integrated support, including livelihood, recovery, peace building, and conflict prevention. And we have other projects at regional ECOWAS levels, supporting food security, adaptation of pastoralism, sustainable food value chains, etc. And then apart from these packaged projects, we also have rapid response projects of a smaller scale and shorter duration, a few million euros over 2 years, more focused on some areas and supporting peace building, reduction of violence, but also through LAPIMO projects, in which are focusing very much on Koti. And we launched second phase of one of our projects recently, coupled with Casina. Last week I was in Nigeria Delta, where we also have an ongoing project of this sort. And we went in particular to a very destitute community, Port Harcourt, waterfront community. It was very interesting to see the impact of these projects on the reduction of level of violence, which in turn opens a lot more of socio-economic opportunities for population. And then we also have a strong geographical sensitivity in our cooperation. Of course, poverty is not limited to the northeast and northwest in Nigeria, but there are clearly specific challenges in these regions. And again, if we total all the projects we've been launching this year and since last year, covering northeast and northwest, with our member states body to Europe We are nearly approaching 300 million euros of new projects for what I call the Northern Package for the Northeast and the Northwest. And this on top of our military aid, which is mainly focusing also to these regions. And all these benefit mainly the most vulnerable and poor people. And finally, one last word about what is the new brain of the EU cooperation, the Global Gateway Strategy. Probably you've heard by it. And sometimes you hear criticisms saying that, oh, the Global Gateway Strategy is the EU dropping its traditional commitment with SDGs and helping private sector companies to make big profits, etc. And this is not the case, rather the contrary. SDGs are steeped at the sector of our Global Gateway Strategy because we know that if we want to reach SDGs, official development assistance and public resources will not be sufficient. We need to raise private resources. We need to leverage private investment. And this is what the Global Gateway is about. Try to leverage private investments, partly, yes, with the private sector. Try to address bottlenecks, facilitate investment, improve investment environments to raise these investment, but always be a focus towards SDGs. And so this is what we're trying to roll out now in Nigeria and what we are doing in sectors like renewable energy, like health or like digital economy, which is a powerful also way of giving pathways of social promotion to many young people, in particular in Nigeria, is a part and parcel of this effort. I think I've used the time I was allowed. So thank you very much for your attention.